Before we get started with today's video, a short word from our sponsor, Opera GX. Now unfortunately, the browser you are currently watching this video on right now, it's boring and it's whack. But the good news is, Opera and I are inviting you to join us in the magical world of customization and optimization as you surf the web. Opera's system, called GX Mods, allows you to tailor your browsing experience to reflect your personal visual style from top to bottom. I mean, check out this medieval-themed one with custom background music, keyboard sounds, opening and closing tab sounds, theme, and colors, all of which can be further customized and kind of fine-tuned to your liking. You hop on the GX store and there's just an overwhelming amount of options out there to just download and try, see what you like, and if none of those are quite your thing, you can even make your very own custom themes and upload them for others to enjoy. Now it's pretty stuff, but Opera GX has even more going for it under the hood. With GX Control, you can literally limit how many resources are allotted to Opera while you are in-game, allowing you to keep those 250,000 tabs open no problem, you psychopath. Also, with brand spanking new generative AI integration, you literally have access to ChatGPT right in the sidebar. Ask it how it's doing, ask it to summarize a character just like Gortash for you, or shoot, have it do your homework, I don't care. Baldur's Gate 3 might take thousands of hours to fully explore for yourself, but you can be up and running with Opera GX in just a few convenient clicks. Download Opera GX down below with the special Ghostcharm code to support this channel directly, and thank you so much to Opera for sponsoring. Let's now get things started.
Oh yes, we've much to discuss. Together, we can still restore authority over the brain. But first, come and be witness as I make history as the first Archduke of Baldur's Gate.
Greed is a powerful emotion. The overwhelming desire for more. More wealth, more adoration, more influence, more power. No matter how much one gets, it's never enough. Greed is a corrupting and sinister force. It eats us alive, blackens our minds, makes us believe that we alone are owed the world, and reveals the roughest, ugliest facets of human nature. Lord Enver Gortash of Baldur's Gate 3 is a video game villain that explores the depths of human avarice and this dogged determination to bite, scratch, and claw his way to the very top of the political world of Faerun by any means necessary. An antagonist that wields immense charisma, intelligence, strategic prowess, and powers of manipulation while being aided from the shadows by one of the most notoriously evil gods in all of Dungeons & Dragons lore. Well, my friends, as you very likely know, over the last few uploads on this channel, we have tackled 2/3 of Baldur's Gate 3's main villainous force known as the Chosen Three. We covered General Ketheric Thorm as well as Orin the Red extensively, digging into their respective backstories, their motivations, and unique quirks as villains, all so we could arrive here today with the final piece of the puzzle. So please, if you haven't seen those two videos, I encourage you to start there. Watching them in upload order will offer up the most complete portrait of this villainous team and their grand scheme to take over the world in the name of their respective gods. Now, though we have saved him for last, Enver Gortash, in my opinion, is probably the single most interesting character out of these Chosen Three. A man who came from the humblest of beginnings in the inner city and rose from the ashes of a truly broken life to become an underworld kingpin until eventually he had his tyrant's grip on the entire political theater of Baldur's Gate. A villain with an intimate connection to one of the most beloved party members in the entire game. This right here is the most personable, the most malleable, and I would argue the most human of all the diverse antagonists Baldur's Gate 3 has to offer. So welcome everyone to the Villainpedia, a video series where we take long hard looks at the most evil characters in the medium of video games and try to find out what makes them tick. I am Ghost, your host as always. A huge thank you to all of my wonderful patrons for supporting this channel away from YouTube. You guys are the best. Now I will warn you all one more time, there are massive spoilers ahead for Baldur's Gate 3, so as always, proceed with caution. And without further ado, please take my hand, follow me as we finish the fight here and learn everything there is to know about our final chosen, Lord Enver Gortash. Well, when looking back at the other two chosen, they had, in this very unique Faerunian villain sort of way, privileged upbringings. Ketheric came from a noble house. He was the holder of a massive amount of land, he had a castle, and at some point he had a loving family and loyal following. Orin was born into this dark lineage of Baal. She was bred to be a killer from birth, with some of the most lethal people in the history of the realms guiding her along the way, the blood of a god literally running through her veins. But Gortash was not given any sort of head start at all. His life began as a complete and utter nobody, a commoner at the rock bottom of the totem pole, and I think it is vitally important to keep this simple fact in mind as we see the type of evil that ends up developing within this character. So yes, Gortash was born right here in Baldur's Gate in the lower district of the city to Dravo and Sally Flim, a pair of cobblers that inherited this ratty little family shop. But unfortunately for them, it seems business was, well, never booming. The Flim family was very, very poor and experienced a rather extreme level of poverty as they attempted to raise their only child amongst the hustle and bustle of this great city. But let's just say that the child they happened to have didn't make things much easier. From the earliest stages of life, little Gortash was, well, difficult. His father described him as a clever, very needy boy with a hateful streak that was always tinkering with things, poking his nose where it shouldn't be, and just generally always finding some way to cause trouble. So the familial stress of having sort of a high-maintenance son, as well as devastating financial issues, well, it nearly caused this family to fall apart completely. But they always decided to stick it out together and just do everything they could to not have to close up this shop. So, in an effort to stabilize things a bit, this couple sought out a large loan of gold from something called the Guild, a mysterious criminal organization that resided underneath the city itself, which it's just not a good idea, right? But the loan was delivered in a timely manner, so for a while anyway, that gold did wonders. The family was finally able to eat regularly, pay off their bills, and just keep their heads above water. But of course, before they knew it, the money ran out and business did not improve whatsoever. They were right back where they started with an even larger problem on their hands. They owed a large debt to the guild that they had no way of paying back, and their lives, all three of them, were in jeopardy. Now, I'm not exactly sure how old Gortash would be at this point, but we know he was very young. I would guess like 10 or 11. And man, being around that level of uncertainty, probably going to sleep most nights with an empty stomach and this legitimate danger kind of breathing down the family's neck, that would have a profound impact on a child. But believe it or not, things were about to get even worse for our villain. Now, we need to bring back into the fold here a character we spoke quite a bit about in the Ketheric entry, and that is the lovely devil himself, Raphael. Now, this, for my money, is the best, most well-rounded villain in the entirety of Baldur's Gate 3, a devious bastard who's always making deals with mortals where he sees it beneficial, a true master of manipulation and charm. Well, Raphael, from his home, has a pretty good finger on the pulse of those that are desperate, and upon monitoring the situation the Flim family had fallen into, he decided he would maybe pay them a little visit. But of course, coming to this little family as a full-on devil would be a little bit extreme, so he instead came in a disguise, posing as a traveling warlock. And upon arriving at their door, eyeing little Enver and seeing how destitute things truly were, Raphael offered something unforeseen. He desired to purchase this child outright from the Flims, and he had substantial coin to make it worth their while. Well, the boy's parents deliberated and decided that the coin was too much to turn down and agreed. Now, let's make no mistake about this, man. Selling your child to a stranger, extremely evil business, and it's inexcusable, really. Who cares how bad the debt is? And honestly, as weird as little Enver probably was, this moment of being transferred over to Raphael as just a young kid, it's the turning point for this character completely, unwillingly being sold down a path of uncertainty, of abuse, and of evil. Well, Raphael's home, the House of Hope, is located in a rather cozy location, Hell, and Gortash was then essentially enslaved here, forced to work as a page boy and live within the dungeons. He was looked after regularly by the House of Hope's charming dungeon keeper, this disgusting little rock gnome named Nubalden, who hated Enver and would regularly beat and torture this kid for his own amusement. So needless to say, life here was just indescribably awful, far worse than the poverty he experienced in the city. This was a life of abuse, of servitude, and a life devoid of the love that every child ought to be surrounded by. This is also, from what I can tell anyway, where Enver's surname changed from Flim to Gortash. Now, I don't know why this was done, if it was done by him or by Raphael, but for what it's worth, roughly translated from Turkish, Gortash means strong stone, so maybe it was some statement about his resilience. Now, who knows how long he was stuck down in hell, but I would guess several years minimum, throughout his teens for sure. But somewhere along the line, Enver reached his breaking point. He realized that he would die here unless he did something about it, and so he began to devise a way of escaping this cursed fate. The details of this liberation are very much left up for our interpretation, but Nubalden tells us himself in-game that he made some sort of, quote, mistake, and Enver was able to slip through his fingers. Now, within the House of Hope, there is a room known as the Chamber of Egress, which houses all the portals that allow Raphael and others to freely travel back to places like Baldur's Gate, Waterdeep, as well as other dimensions altogether. So this is likely as simple as Enver somehow worming his way out of the dungeons, making a dead break for this chamber, and he was able to slip through the correct portal to return home. This is in some way confirmed by Nubalden's kind of punishment for this mistake, which was losing his position as Dungeon Master and being reassigned to look after this chamber for all time. So just like that, Gortash was free again, back on the streets of Baldur's Gate, essentially an orphan teenager with severe PTSD on the run from a powerful interdimensional devil. But you know what? He had no time to feel sorry for himself. He needed to build a new life, and quickly, or risk being chewed up and spit out by the dangers of the streets. So wow, I mean, that's a less than ideal start for someone who would eventually grow into one of the biggest threats the land of Faerun had seen in centuries. Honestly, I think it's incredible that he was able to escape the House of Hope at all. And I also think you can clearly see how an already kind of clever, weird, mischievous kid would be substantially warped by this experience. I mean, the level of physical, emotional, and mental suffering at such a formative age for multiple years, it stripped this character of any sense of sentimentality, of the normal human ways we think of others and look to work alongside and help our peers. Gortash, pretty understandably, came to believe the only way through life was by sheer determination and maneuvering. Nobody is truly looking after you, not even your own family. Nobody is coming to help you. Nobody is coming to save the day. No, it is up to you, the individual alone, to go out and help yourself. Now, on paper, those could be very, very admirable traits, a strict moral compass that theoretically could assist Gortash in making a better life for himself, and hey, possibly even empowering others to do the same thing along the way. But ultimately, we are who we are. A broken man either beats the devil or becomes one, and Enver remained as clever, as devious, and as selfish as he always had been. If he could endure what he had endured, imagine what he could accomplish here, back in the world of weak men and opportunity. So Enver increasingly saw the world as a ripe fruit for his picking. But unfortunately, this right here is where we find a pretty sizable gap in this villain's origin story. I mean, what happened directly after coming back to Baldur's Gate, how he survived, where he lived, who he befriended, and if he ever visited his parents or something. It's anyone's guess. But the next part of Gortash's story we are certain about is his ascent in the world of crime. Now, Enver somehow learned the ropes when it came to the black market, the sale of weapons, of slaves, and other illegal things outside the attention of the authorities. And he very, very quickly was able to establish himself in that world as a personality that other people just wanted to work with, work for, and rally around. Because I would argue, and this is pretty obvious, that Gortash's greatest weapon is his personality. It's his charm, his silver tongue, and his ability to make other people feel comfortable as if they are always getting a bargain. Now, it's kind of funny when you realize this trait doesn't fall far from his sort of adoptive tree. Raphael is obviously known for the very same set of things. It's the hallmark talents of a devil. So maybe Gortash's time in the House of Hope rubbed off in more ways than one. But in this business, Gortash would end up spending years grinding away in the trade and establishing this bulletproof reputation of being a straight-up scoundrel, but a scoundrel that undeniably got things done in a dependable and thorough manner. He learned that he really was a natural leader of men, and many flocked to his side as his dominance of this industry grew rapidly. But I will say, he had a bit of an ace up his sleeve that allowed him to, at a point, control so much of this line of work, and that was a way of acquiring something known as infernal iron, a type of metal only found, guess where, in the hells that allowed for the crafting of infernal weapons. Extremely valuable, strong, fire-infused armaments and armor that would be extremely rare and sought after not only in Baldur's Gate, but beyond. Now, it's not exactly known how he got his hands on this stuff, but it eventually enabled him to oust his biggest competitors in the city, the Knights of the Shield, and then even along the Chanthar Valley he surpassed the Zentaran, a very well-connected black market guild that we interact with directly in this game. But you gotta remember that this is a dirty business. I mean, mob-type activities. So as Gortash eclipsed all of his competitors, naturally a target was being painted firmly on his back. Well, Enver was never much of a fighter, so he needed to hire, at some point, some muscle to look after his well-being, and that is when he employed another Baldur's Gate resident, Karlach Cliffgate, one of our beloved companions and origin characters here in BG3, to act as his personal bodyguard. And for a considerable amount of time, she did just that. She traveled all over the place with Gortash. The pay was excellent, and Karlach genuinely grew to admire her boss. He trusted her with his life, valued her skills, and seemed genuinely to appreciate her company and conversation. Observers might even call them friends, but, well, things were not as peachy as Karlach thought. This relationship would come to a dramatic and rather abrupt end, when just like he was sold off to Raphael while in the care of his parents, Enver turned around and sold Karlach as if she were a slave just the same to a being known as Zariel, an archdevil of the hells. Now, Karlach is of course a tiefling, and she was deemed the perfect test subject for something Zariel had been wanting to kind of try out, replacing the heart of a mortal soldier with an infernal machine. An engine, essentially, in an effort to stress test the limits of infernal technology when combined with living flesh. Now, maybe Gortash received a mountain of gold in return, maybe something else, who's to say? But wow, I mean, Enver just doesn't care about others at all unless they have something valuable to offer him right now. He's willing to turn on anyone, granted the alternative gets him like an inch further ahead than he was 5 minutes ago. Karlach's whole story, though, is a very interesting ride as well. She ends up fighting for Zariel in the Hells for like a decade as this deadly soldier before finding her way back to Faerun, meeting you, and embarking on her own quest to keep her mechanical heart cool and find a way to live instead of being this ticking time bomb. So obviously having her in your party when you meet and interact with Gortash, it's very good stuff. But Karlach aside, I mean, look at our villain, man. Against all odds, overcoming absolutely insane circumstances, this character crawled out of the mud. And more than just that, Gortash became the #1 smuggler in the region while amassing an insane amount of personal wealth, as well as innumerable contacts and relationships that ran from the lowest end of the totem pole all the way up to the very dukes of Baldur's Gate. He came to be known as a self-styled military advisor for the elite of the city, and even had a deeply romantic, spicy relationship with one Ferelia Janeth, one of the highest of high noblewomen in the realms. It took time, blood, sweat, and maybe one tear, but Gortash had done it. He had everything he could need for multiple lifetimes. But of course, he wasn't satisfied. In fact, from his perspective, he was just getting started. Now, if there's something that binds the Chosen Three together as characters aside from their shared goals and plan, it is their zealous devotion to one of the dead three. Myrkul, Lord of Bones, Baal, Lord of Murder, and Bane, Lord of Tyranny. Three gods of death and destruction that long ago were themselves killed and now act as quasi-deities. Things of supreme evil attempting to cover the world in darkness and blood as they strive to regain their divine status and conquer all of existence through their mortal chosen. So we saw clearly how Ketheric came to Myrkul. He was dead as a doornail and then hand-selected by the Lord of Bones to be brought back as an undead general. And then Orin, of course, is the granddaughter of Baal, but still, she took a more aggressive and murderous route, killing her god's chosen and replacing him as the favorite. So, then with Gortash, we must ask the question, how did he come to worship Bane? What brought on this union? Well, I'm very sorry and disappointed to say, we have no idea. The details of his worship and relationship with this deity are completely unspoken, and to be honest, this has always kind of pissed me off. Because Bane is a fascinating god, the lord of not only tyranny, but also of hatred, of terror, and oppression. His official domains being that of order and war, a lawful evil deity that had little interest in direct death like his co-conspirators, but instead wished to see a world very much alive but actively suffering under his rule and control. So one would think to become a mortal chosen of a god like Bane, you would have to already be a ruler of some sort, right? A tyrant, and beyond just that, a devoted follower, worshipping the dread lord for years to prove yourself worthy of his favor and power. So, well, I guess then it's up to us to theorize when Gortash exactly may have found the black light of Bane appealing. Now, this could be in quite a few different places, so while spending much of his youth within the House of Hope dungeons, who knows who else Enver may have met and interacted with. This absolutely would have been a time of great hatred growing in his heart, and maybe a time where he would be searching for a place to put that emotion in order and turn it outwardly onto others. So maybe he was locked in the dungeons with a Bane worshipper or priest of some sort and found the teachings of this god to his liking and began at a very young age. Or perhaps when he began his ascent through the arms business, he discovered Bane himself as he valued the tenets of oppression as a means to personal gain. I mean, he absolutely exhibited that sort of recklessness at this point in his life that allowed him to do horrible things without a second thought. But maybe then it's also possible that Bane merely sought Enver out, more akin to the way Ketheric was chosen, and it was proposed to Gortash to work alongside this god for both their sake. Maybe even Bane was able to push Enver further toward the political world and eventually toward this plan with the other chosen. I mean, it has been said in the lore of the Forgotten Realms that Bane will often come to aid those attempting to establish order or conquer new territories. So who knows, but somehow Enver was indeed chosen. Bane saw him as a man who was destined for the High Castle in some respect, but also one that could absolutely put on the riz and the smile necessary to seem like an approachable, affable leader. Really, the perfect Trojan horse for Bane's dark vision of the world. So at this point, Gortash was in a fine position to do pretty much anything he wanted in Baldur's Gate and beyond. And let me tell you, he had some lofty aspirations for sure. Well, it is around this time that he encountered and befriended a character we spoke extensively about in the Orin entry, the Dark Urge. A dragonborn who was at the time the chosen of Baal and arguably the most effective and notorious assassin in the entire world. So these two, though their methods were rather different, both seemed to value similar things. They wanted to serve their respective gods well. They wanted to amass personal power, and they did not mind whatsoever seeing many people in this world suffer. So over time, they grew to be extremely close. I don't think as close as some of the fandom thinks, but I think friends for sure, that wanted to devise this grand plot together to bring the world firmly under their boot heels. But all the while, Gortash continued to schmooze, man. He continued to advise the dukes and generals of the city on certain matters, and he started to take himself really out of the shadows of the black market and more into the public eye. He wanted the people of this city to know his face, know him as this charming, strong, potential leader type. He wanted them to know his wealth, his stance on things, and his very proud status as a native Baldurian. But even as the people started to adore him, Gortash soon realized that he had hit a bit of a ceiling. Certain dukes and fellow advisors straight up did not trust him. They could see through his whole kind of dashing gentleman act, so he needed to get his hands a little bit dirty if he wanted to continue to climb. And the key to unlocking the sort of untapped power he truly desired, well, it was the very plot he had been hatching with the Dark Urge. And this plot, well, of course, it's the setup to all of Baldur's Gate 3. The plan regarding the brain, the absolute crisis that we have spoken so much about in these videos. But it probably started out relatively slow, with these two meeting and then aligning themselves with Ketheric Thorm, and then underneath his castle of Moonrise Towers, the discovery of that massive illithid colony, the discovery of that elder brain. It all hatched the ambitious idea to control this thing, wrangle one of the most powerful psionic creatures in the known universe, and use it as a tool to infect thousands of people with the illithid tadpoles, mind control them, and orchestrate all of that controlled chaos in Baldur's Gate as they gunned for control of the city. So in the Ketheric video, we discussed the absolute. In the Orin video, we discussed the actual plan of the Chosen Three. But right now, in this video, I think we need to discuss another aspect of this game's story that I have yet to touch on here, and it is the angle of the illithid. Well, so much of Baldur's Gate 3's narrative surrounds what else but the timeless Dungeons & Dragons creature known as the Mind Flayer. Horrific things feared by all those in Faerun, psionically charged Lovecraftian horrors that want to feed on living brains, transform their victims into mind flayers, and then re-establish their ancient empire. Yes, believe it or not, in the age before time itself, these nasty buggers ruled across the stars and dimensions totally. Other races, other planets and planes of existence were merely cattle for them to constantly expand their numbers and grow that empire. Kind of like a fungus, really. But one of the peoples that fought against them endlessly from the beginning of time was the Githyanki. a race that we have plenty of exposure to in Baldur's Gate 3. Now, I can't go into all of this because we'd be here for 3 or 4 days and I just don't want to do that, but the Emperor, Orpheus, the Gith Queen, the ways in which you, the player, are given so much control in the narrative to kind of like join one of these sides of this eternal conflict or condemn them all, it's fantastic, but it's overwhelming stuff. And my point in bringing up all of this is, as much as you may believe as you are playing through this title the first time that the Chosen Three are the end-all be-all of the antagonism here, they simply are not. This game, in the macro, is about the potential return of this ancient Illithid empire. I mean, just look at the logo, son. And the Elder Brain that these Chosen found and decided to try to control, well, it is the hinge on which the door swings. Now, this is all important to say, because to fully contextualize Gortash specifically as a villain, his approach to the world and the things he wants out of it, we need to understand just how many larger, more powerful forces are at work here. Believe me, it will mean a lot when we look at this character's ultimate fate. But still, the Chosen Three carried on with their scheme, and this included something that is just downright absurd. So to control the Elder Brain, they needed to claim the Crown of Karsus, a powerful magical relic we talked about in the Ketheric entry that had been stashed away in guess where? Yes, hell. But not just hell, in the personal vault of this devil named Mephistopheles, who just so happens to also be Raphael's father. So maybe this one was a little personal for Gortash. But the Dark Urge and Enver literally orchestrated a heist on hell. They stormed the vault of this archdevil, snatched the crown, and were assisted by this warlock in opening a portal back to the city and making out like bandits. Now, this is probably the most dangerous thing that Gortash ever did firsthand, period. But embedded in this crown were the 3 stones, the Nether Stones, which would be removed and placed in the care of each of the Chosen. And then, once the crown was on the Brain's brain head, wielding those stones together acted as the sole method of controlling such a powerful creature. Ketheric's was placed within his breastplate, the Dark Urges in the hilt of a dagger, and Gortash in his gauntlet of domination. Now, again, I don't want to repeat too much information from video to video here, but you likely know what the plan was. The Chosen would use this Elder Brain to infect people with the tadpoles, assemble an army, then Gortash and the Dark Urge would head back to the city, while Ketheric prepared to march on Baldur's Gate with said army. The Dark Urge would get to murdering people inside the city walls that opposed Gortash, as well as just some random citizens to make the populace uneasy, and this would hopefully allow Gortash to ascend in times of trouble as the only man with the backbone, the reputation, the resources, and the strength to protect Baldur's Gate. He desired to be crowned the first Archduke in the history of the city. And just for some context here, Baldur's Gate had always been ruled by something called the Council of Four. 4 different elected dukes that held their position for life, but always ruled as a group, trying to keep the interests of all people and parties within the city involved in governing. Gortash, well, he was going to do his own thing. But a key component in the plan here for our little dictator is something known as the Steel Watch. Oh yeah, a small army of automatons, massive, solid metal warriors that were pretty much like robots that Gortash had constructed to follow his every command. This right here is another dastardly piece of villainy altogether. So to have such a modern marvel designed and actually built, he had enslaved a large group of Gondians. Now, these are just people who follow the god of craft named Gond, and all of them were extremely skilled artisans that would be capable of such a feat. But they were enslaved here in this warehouse down by the wharf by Gortash, by him capturing their loved ones and taking them hostage in an underwater prison called the Iron Throne, putting a collar on all of the workers, which means if one of these artisans acts out of line or tries to escape, their head will literally explode and then their respective loved one will be murdered in the prison. Now, it makes for a pretty tense and productive work environment over here, I'd bet, so the Steel Watchers were nearly perfect. And this was key. It's what Gortash plotted to use as a sort of authoritarian police force in Baldur's Gate once he took power, as well as the defending side that would meet the Absolute Forces, dramatically defeating them in this rigged fight and allowing Enver to come out on top as the savior. But of course, right as this is all set up and about to be set in motion, things go slightly sideways for our villain. Orin the Red, second in command under the Dark Urge after much jealousy and plotting in the shadows, murders her brother, the Chosen, a lizard who was instrumental in this thing, really an evil genius, and Orin then replaced him immediately in this plot as the new Chosen of Bhaal. Now, even though this might seem inconsequential because the blueprint was already there, it was a huge deal from Enver's perspective. His closest ally really on the planet, who knew his truest intentions and associations with Bane and all these other things, the guy he had hatched this whole plot with, was gone in an instant. And in his place was an unpredictable madwoman. Now again, it's less than ideal, but we are talking about a character who's very familiar with adversity. So Enver likely just accepted this small tragedy, thought how he could use the current circumstances to best serve himself, and plotted in secret to simply betray his two remaining allies. Which, funny enough, the other two were planning as well. Now, a sinister little side note, around this time, Enver decided to visit his parents down in the lower district who were still very much alive, and personally infected them with illithid parasites. They would now be mind-controlled alongside all the absolute people and had no choice but to sing their son's praises to the end of their days. Must have been a cathartic visit, but still, messed up. Homie got some problems. But anyway, overall, this is a pretty good plan for world domination, if I do say so myself. Gortash just needed a way to get his hands on the other two stones somehow, and have complete control over the brain to do what he and Bane pleased with it. And so, as always, we come to the point in this video where we must ask the question, what are we, the player, going to do about it? How are we going to stop this villain? Well, as far as playing Baldur's Gate 3, just like Orin, the first time we ever hear a peep about Gortash at all is in Act 1, when the Absolute is kind of invading your mind and giving you this vision of the Chosen Three obscured in darkness. Enver is described as a young, handsome man with an easy smile, and
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck?
And also like Orin, we don't see this character in any real clarity until the very end of Act 2, some like 60 hours into the experience, when we are introduced to the whole Absolute cult thing in that iconic cutscene. But from that first showing, you definitely get the sense that he is the leader of these three. Enver has a certain presence that commands respect and authority even around these other extremely powerful people. I mean, he just comes across as the mastermind that will be waiting for you at the climax of the narrative. But as he and Orin kind of leave, you go on to kill Ketheric and claim his Netherstone, putting a massive hang-up in the Chosen scheme. But still, Thorm's work was kind of done, right? The army he amassed is heading toward the city, and we have to run, get there first, and track down the other two stones to take control of this brain for ourselves. Well, although we watched this cutscene in the Orin entry, I actually want to have another look at the opening cinematic of Act 3, but this time through the lens of Gortash.
Sergeant, if you are here, I presume Wern's Rock is secure, and preparations for my inauguration are complete.
No, Lord Gortash. We were interrupted. Another quake in the lower city. More severe this time.
So you came cowering to my chambers? I'm flattered, Sergeant, but even I cannot command natural phenomena to cease.
Forgive me, my lord, but there is panic in the streets. The people are afraid.
Perhaps the people would be calm if you kept your nerve. I expect better from the Flaming Fist than to run scared from a slight tremor in the earth. Get back to your duties.
Duties, duties, duties. Patrolling and saluting and following and bowing and scraping. Yes, sir. No, sir. Rip and cut your throat, sir.
Your plan is falling apart, lordling. Give me a reason not to cut you to ribbons.
Control yourself, Orin. We need to focus on reuniting the stones or the brain will break free. These quakes are just the start. Neither of us expected the prison bearers to kill Ketheric. They'll be traveling to the city. Let's make sure we give them a Baldurian welcome.
I itch to peel you, to split your skin, to see your skull shine in the light. Little tyrant. Lucky for you, I harvested a whole family of living flesh in Rivington at high sun. They will sate my blade thirst tonight. Oh, but tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow, my blades will thirst again.
So first, I gotta say, the actor who portrays our lovely lord is simply sensational. Jason Isaacs, who you very likely know as Lucius Malfoy from the Harry Potter films, as well as a wonderfully evil William Tavington in that movie The Patriot. Oh, great role. Mr. Isaacs is a world-class talent, no doubt about it, and he gives this character a wonderful sense of arrogance through his performance. I mean, that charm, that somewhat likable demeanor, but something under the surface being not quite right, it's just sensational. I actually read a really interesting bit with Jason where he was talking about playing Gortash and how it was unlike any role he had ever had in the past because he recorded a quote, billion different versions of Gortash and felt that he had lived a multitude of different lives with this villain. And ultimately, he found it fascinating that it's up to the player to bring out the version of Gortash that they want based on their own actions. Now, obviously, right? But I just love seeing people who maybe aren't that into RPGs and video games and stuff to see firsthand why we all love this medium of storytelling so much. It's cool for me, I like it. But yes, this character is obviously over the idea of working with Orin and with Ketheric Thormdead. I think at this point, Gortash has no problem abandoning ship and taking this girl out. Well, as Act 3 begins, we actually learn that both he and Orin desire to kill the other, and of course, the key ingredient for them to succeed is us. So while Orin takes a rather aggressive approach to contact you and make you pee-pee your pants, Gortash kind of just goes about his business privately and waits patiently for you to come to him, which I find very appropriate. And that works out just fine from Enver's perspective because guess what? He's a little busy. After the Chosen were able to capture Duke Ulder Ravengard and infect him with a mind control parasite, the way was finally open for Gortash to be crowned at last as Archduke of the city. Which I do think makes sense narratively. The citizens were fearful, the politicians decimated or controlled by Enver, and just as we ourselves are heading for the center of the city, we stumble upon the very ceremony of Gortash's anointment, something that we kind of hilariously and awkwardly just walk right into the middle of. This is the first time we get a chance to speak face to face with Gortash, and this meeting is of course even spicier if you have Karlach at your side.
Kinspeople, Baldurians, and dearest Duke Ravengard, thank you for joining me on this exceptional day.
It's him. Gortash. This is it. I can practically taste his blood from here.
Fine. I'll wait for now. But that prick Gortash is going to pay.
A moment, please, my friends. An old acquaintance has come to pay her respects. Please, Karlach, come and say a proper hello.
My respects? You're lucky I've agreed not to shove my boot up your...
Ah, how I've missed your colourful turns of phrase. We must catch up just as soon as I've had words with your little friend. As for you, I understand congratulations are in order. Thorm's defeat hasn't gone unnoticed. You're known for who you are and for that netherstone that you carry. The quakes are a clear warning. If nobody steps in soon, it'll free itself from the authority of the crown. I expect it'll start with turning the Sword Coasts infected. You among them. That prism of yours won't last indefinitely. Next, the grand design. The Mind Flayer Empire reborn. If we're lucky, we'll become slaves. If we're unlucky, well, not the most thrilling of prospects, but it's a fate that can be avoided if you and I come to an understanding. Together, we can still restore authority over the brain. It's not, but it will not follow new orders unless the Netherstones are united to give the command. When it finishes executing its current orders, it will be free to do as it wishes. That will be bad for everyone. Once it is freed from its shackles, I doubt we'll ever be able to bring it under control again. There's an old wisdom. A brittle alliance can never be mended. It can only break. With Ketheric gone, Orin proved treacherous. Baal's Chosen wants the Netherstones for herself. She only cares for blood. And your blood and mine are of particular interest to her. Orin changes shape faster than you and I change clothes. You know, she's tricked you before. She's targeted me as well. I'm well protected, but she's extremely good at what she does. If Orin obtains all 3 Netherstones, She'll plunge the coast into chaos and paint the city in blood. I can't let that happen. I want to lead this city to glory, not scorch its earth. I'd like to propose a pact, a divine oath sworn upon spirit and flesh. I do no harm to you, nor you to me. Furthermore, you'll have nothing to fear from my steel watch while our pact stands. Thorm's stone is yours to keep. When you slay Orin and take her stone, you bring it here, so the three are united once again. Together we rule Faerun as kings. No, more than kings. Gods. We rule as the absolute. What do you say? Shall we be allies?
Let's be allies, said the viper to the frog.
Gortash's eyes blink in a consistent rhythm. He stands calmly, confidently. He fully intends to share his kingdom with you.
So Ketheric was ready to betray our alliance too. I can't say it comes as a surprise. But you should know this. I initiated this plot. I brought Ketheric and Orin together to create the Absolute. They knew this would only work if we stood united and coordinated our powers. Their ambition blinded them to reason. I don't suffer the same affliction. In short, you can trust me. Then let it be writ by the black hand of Bane. I, Lord Enver Gortash, swear I shall do you no harm. We will rise together over Toriel as a roaring sun.
This isn't going to end well. Mark my words.
So wow, I mean that's a lot of information, but I love how we get to experience this dude's powers of schmoozing firsthand. Turning the defeat of one of his closest allies into something he is cheerfully congratulating us on? This man was built for politics for sure. And his general demeanor is very effective in disarming our likely violent intentions in coming to this place to find him. And it turns this whole thing into merely a friendly conversation, almost making you feel silly at the notion of it ever being anything else. I also adore the tactic he uses right here to say that Orin has a particular interest in killing the both of us. You know, it puts the idea in your mind of you two being aligned against something in some way and plants the seed of potential cooperation. This guy really is a master, and I think the writing Gortash is given is fantastic. He paints an honest vision of the future should you choose to work with him. The people of Baldur's Gate, well, they would be controlled completely, but you and he would rule side by side as kings and lead the city to some brand of glory. There is no subplot to stab you in the back. He seems to admire your strength in getting this far and genuinely wants to share this plan with you and you alone. Now, of course, it's worth noting the particular weight this whole interaction carries if the player is playing as the Dark Urge, his close friend seemingly back from the dead.
My favorite assassin. I'm so glad you've returned to my side. We have important matters to address. My reunion with Karlach can wait. Oh, I'd forgotten. Your memories are quite lost, aren't they? Orin told me she'd made a fool of you. Let me clear up some mysteries then. It's about time, I think.
He then kind of spins the whole conversation to putting things right as they should have been had Orin not interfered. It's very, very good stuff. And as always, you got to remember there are many branches of dialogue I am not showing in these videos. It's always best to play for yourself and explore these characters firsthand to see all that they have to say and offer. So yeah, if you want to, this is an RPG, you can just attack Gortash right here, right now, murder him and take his netherstone and be on your merry way. But, well, that isn't much fun, is it? Agreeing to help him root out the Ball cult and kill Orin is definitely my preferred way forward, even if you want to come back and betray Enver in 20 minutes. So on you go with Act 3 then, and the next logical step after this fortress is of course the city. So much to see, so much to do. I mean the murder mystery stuff we talked about with Orin, the end of the Night Song quest, the conclusion of all your party members' narratives. What a big messy treat this final act is. But you will notice as you're exploring Baldur's Gate that Enver's Steel Watch is absolutely everywhere. They're patrolling the streets with the guards, watching every citizen's every move, and if you personally misbehave, well, you're gonna have a rough time on your hands. But I love how it feels like you get here, right when this whole plan is 90% loaded like this. Authoritarian robots and all. And I also love how you feel Gortash's presence through them. It's like he has eyes and ears everywhere. So assuming you go and take down Orin as I did, grab her netherstone from her dagger and resurface from the stank, you will now hold 2 of the 3 rocks necessary to control the brain, and you just have to decide how you would like to handle Gortash, and there are 2 pretty obvious paths here. So let's first cover the choice of just taking out Gortash ourselves. So to do this, you can head over to the Worm's Rock Fortress anytime you like. Go up to his office at the very top of the fort, barge in, and attempt to murder him in cold blood. However, the Steel Watch, they're not an enemy to underestimate, and his office will be a death trap if you go about things this directly. So the better path here is to first head over to the Steel Foundry in the city and get to the bottom of deactivating all his automatons. Now this of course means meeting those Gondian slaves, finding a way to access the submersible to reach the Iron Throne prison, freeing the loved ones of those slaves in this really irritating timed quest, and then bringing one of those Gondians down into the depths of the forge, fighting these big steel spider things, and eventually turning the entire mechanical army off remotely. Some people out there have called this the least fun questline in the game, and well, yeah, it's not the best, but I do think it's worth doing if you enjoy the narrative, because you get to really see behind the curtain of just how evil Gortash is and the lengths he went to have these things built. Also personally, I love seeing the Bane servant enemies here with the black hand painted on their armor. Bane is by far my favorite of the Dead 3, so it's really fun for me living in that theme for a time. But if you do this, you not only have officially pissed off Gortash and burned the bridge of cooperation, you have also made his final confrontation and fight much easier, and I mean like dramatically easier, so let's see what he has to say when we storm in to kill him with Karlach at our side.
This was your doing, wasn't it, Karlach? The destruction of my Steel Watch. Such a petty vengeance.
Those things were evil. Just like their papa. To think I ever worked for you. Proudly, too.
I never meant to harm you, dear. Merely to help you realize your vast potential.
You sent me to the hells. You let Zariel take my heart, as though any of it was yours to give away.
The greater good, Karlach. Something I wouldn't expect you to understand.
You feel no regret, do you? All right. How about fear, then?
Oh, you do quite misunderstand. I've already made a deal with your companion. We need each other.
Do we now?
You ought to reconsider. Divided, the Elder Brain will create an illithid army, yourself included in its ranks. Together, we can tame it. I'm sorry you feel wronged by how things ended between us all those years ago. But now we must look to the future.
You make it sound like we were lovers. Or friends. But that wasn't it. I trusted you. I respected you. It was my job to protect you. And that's what I did. I was so young. I didn't recognize evil when I saw it. When you turned on me, I was too dumbstruck to realize what was happening. No way he'd hurt me, I thought. He betrayed me for reasons I still don't quite understand. But I suppose evil has no real cause. It just is. Until it isn't.
You utter brat. You're going to burn this place down.
Good.
No, you have to stop her. Do it, now!
Man, I love that he's still, with his back so obviously up against the wall, just tries to weasel his way out of it and still kind of work with you. It's obvious it's because he has no other options and his strategic rope has simply run out. But yeah, this little fight, well, I'm gonna be honest with you, it sucks. It's lame, like super lame, compared to the incredible fights that Orin and Ketheric offered us. Because first off, well, it takes place like in his office instead of some badass Bane-themed purple throne room or something. And second, as we know, this guy's just not much of a warrior. He sits back there with his crossbow, a few guards come out to help him, and it's as simple as zoning out the ads, slapping the hell out of this man until he falls. You are then able to go over to the deceased lord, pluck the final stone out of his golden gauntlet, and the Emperor comes out and like makes it about him. God, he's an annoying prick. Well, get to him in a video someday, I'm sure. But a very cool detail should you decide to kill Gortash with your own hands. If you use the Speak with Dead spell on him, something very unexpected happens.
You seek Gortash. His soul is already suffering at my hands. That is the fate of all those who fail me. I am Bane, the Black Lord. I am the ultimate tyrant. I am fear. I am hate. And you are the dagger that bled Merkel's favored. You are the thorns that prick at my sides. Yet you are proof that still I will rise, and Baal and Merkel will yield. You live for power. You have proven it with every fallen foe, every chest opened, every skill claimed. As long as mortals and immortals vie for sharper blades and louder voices, I am strengthened. So it is for Baal and Merkel, and so it is for you. You make me eternal.
So cool. This is maybe my favorite detail in the whole game, and I just love the idea that by slaying his chosen, we have only further cemented the inevitability of hatred, of tyranny, and the lust for power to be aspects of existence. So this is, well, it's a fine way to deal with Gortash. It's nice to be able to bring him to justice in his high office. It feels like a fitting end for this type of antagonist, but also, overall, it feels a bit half-baked, a bit incomplete. Now personally, I cannot believe he doesn't have some sort of Ultra Bane transformation like the other Chosen have. I mean, especially considering Bane has been known to possess individuals and morph into a monster with leathery black skin and massive claws in the lore. Larian, what the hell are we doing here? This would have been amazing to see in game, but alas, this is what we have. A sort of whimpering death to one of the most powerful men the city of Baldur's Gate had ever seen. But thankfully, this is not our only path. Should you agree to work with Gortash wholeheartedly and bring him the 2 Netherstones as proof of your loyalty, you will see this scene.
I commend you for putting an end to Orin's madness. She must be screaming bloody murder in the hells even now. My involvement with Orin was never a true alliance. A mad dog understands the yank of the leash on the hand of its master, but it cannot be an equal. You can be my equal. We will raise a black keep in Baldur's Gate. Then we will conquer the Sword Coast and unite all its peoples under our rule. But first, the brain awakens. We must act now. Faithful, come forward. Hand me the Netherstones and we will rule as one.
Now pausing just a second, this is a huge moment. So in demanding your stones, Gortash truly is testing you, only finalizing your alliance if you refuse to hand them over 2 times in a row. If you don't pass this test, things will get violent, which I think is very, very cool.
I'm not here for games. Hand me the stones or face the black hand of Lord Bane. As they should. I was merely testing you. This should be an alliance of peers. You've got a backbone and the makings of a leader. The Dark Lord Bane blesses our alliance. Our time is short. The Elder Brain is held beneath the city. We must go to it if we're to control it. There is a vessel to the Morphic Pool where the brain feeds. I will wait for you at the pool. With the Netherstones in hand, the brain can't resist us. We will be absolute, with an infected army at our beck and call. First, we take Baldur's Gate, then Faerun. All of Toril will soon follow, 1,000 kingdoms at our command.
And so, later on, whenever you wrap up your quest log and begin the ending of the game, we see that Gortash here was true to his word. He awaits your arrival deep under the city by the morphic pool where the brain rests and feeds. Now take a look at this final scene, and if you don't know what's coming, man, it is crazy.
The brain is about to break free. We have no time to lose. We either shackle it by the force of our will and usher in a new age, or the city breaks. You have survived shadows, defied gods, and overcome many challenges to be here. But that doesn't mean you're ready for what comes next. For that, you will have to be much, much stronger. You're right to be afraid, but there's no room for cowardice or complacency. The brain has grown incredibly powerful. Confronting it is madness, but there's no other way. If either of us falters, both of us die. Come, let's end this. Rise. I, Lord Enver Gortash, chosen of Bane, command you. Dark Lord, how did it grow so large?
You think you know why you are here? You are wrong. You placed the crown upon me. It is what made me what I am.
You are delusional. The crown is how we controlled you.
I respected Baal's child once, but not you, Gortash. I allowed you to control me, as long as it suited my purpose. You have played your part. The next order to be given is mine, and it is this. Die.
This is not over.
Wow, just like that. The hand of Bane, Enver Gortash, gets his brain microwaved at the drop of a hat and flops to the floor, dead. Now, this path of working with Enver is my favorite way to fully explore the character, because this brain, from the beginning, was playing the Chosen. They thought with their stones, with the crown, with the power of the Dead Three, they could come to completely control something so powerful, and they were flat out wrong. The brain was guiding events throughout the entire story, playing possum and biding its time to take the reins, rejecting its so-called masters and seeking to advance the grand design, or in other words, the return of the ancient Illithid Empire with its new powers from the crown. There's a lot of fun stuff here we could get into about the Nether Brain, about the Emperor, and the sort of true ending act of Baldur's Gate 3, but I'm sorry to say those are indeed stories for another time. As far as this video's villain is concerned, this is the moment of his ultimate failure. His final seconds of life are flooded with the realization that for the first time, he wasn't several steps ahead. Now, I'm going to be honest, my first time experiencing this ending with Gortash, I was kind of disappointed. I felt frustrated at the game for promising me this cooperative domination of the world, only to have him like winked out of existence during a cutscene before I could ever have him in my party, use him in combat, or see what sort of character he was under that smarmy exterior. But upon coming back around to it for this video, I've changed my mind a little bit. I think it works very, very well. A villain this socially powerful in the world and societal structures of men, able to climb from an abused orphan all the way up to the throne of one of the biggest cities in the world using only his wit and charm, it's a great story. It's a testament to the indomitable human spirit, even if he is evil. But we as humans are foolish to think we can take those skills outside of our own world and charm our way to the same result with cosmic entities. This villain in so many ways embodies the hubris of man, and that is precisely why in the opening of this video, I said that this character is perhaps the most human of all the villains in Baldur's Gate 3. It truly is a Lovecraftian fate for our tyrant. Now, I have seen the criticism out there for this character. It's very similar to the criticisms of Orin, that the rushed development of Act 3 led to a disappointing depiction of what really should have been a much more involved and epic antagonist, and honestly, I gotta agree 101%. The spreading of evil across a handful of very, very different characters instead of one traditional antagonist was, well, a very ambitious narrative choice by Larian, and believe me, I think it worked overall. However, I see Ketheric Thorm, who appears in the middle of this game, as by far the most fleshed out and well realized of the Chosen Three. But man, when you get someone like Jason Isaacs to come in and play your antagonist, and it has a backstory with this much potential, you would hope that the character would be in more than like 4 cutscenes and 1 lame boss fight. So really quick, in a perfect world anyway, this is what I would have loved to see with this villain. Number 1 is a way to prove your loyalty to Gortash much earlier on in Act 3 and actually recruit him into your party as a companion. Maybe then this would force Karlach and other good line characters to leave your camp for good, but in exchange you could have some sort of control over the Steel Watch. That would feel amazing for an evil, like dictator type playthrough. Then imagine you go to your camp to rest and you're put up in the most lavish gilded bedrooms of the dukes of the city with servants and stuff, and then you could storm into Orin's nasty ass Ball Temple after she asked you to kill Gortash with Gortash. Seeing their banter and shit would be hilarious. Now also, I would have loved to have a complete overhaul of the entire depiction of Bane and the powers that he bestowed upon his chosen. Now, believe me, I know, Gortash is trying to be like the president or whatever, so he can't go around with like a Sauron suit of armor or anything. But even within his office, it would have been really cool to see a secret door that led to a purple and black Bane enclave, or little sects of Bane worship in basements throughout the city to show the presence of that god's influence over things. Ball and Merkel got so much incredible visual stuff in iconography with the arenas, the colors, and everything. My boy Bane, straight up, he got shafted. I mean, it's pretty crazy that we don't even know how Gortash and Bane first kind of came together. Becoming a Chosen is a big-ass deal, and I just feel like we needed a lot more meat on the bones of this whole connection. And man, again, why didn't he transform into the big leathery thing? When we were talking about Ketheric and Orin, I said that in their own kind of unique ways, they were never cut out to be the main big villain of this story, and ultimately, they worked best as those secondary antagonists. But I'm gonna be honest, when I look at Gortash, I feel the exact opposite. Now maybe this game just needed an Act 4 and another year or 2 of development to be even greater, because Enver to me feels like the character that should have been the puppet master. Still paling in comparison to the Netherbrain and all that for sure, but his own domination over the city, it should have been much more complex of a thing to dismantle. Now listen, you know me, you know my videos, and I love this game. It's incredible. But it is by no means perfect, and I criticize aspects of it I only see could be that much better. With all that being said, I personally still cannot help but adore this antagonist. His charisma, his obvious flair for the dramatic, his stupid-ass haircut, the gilded gold stuff all over the place, and impeccable dickishness, this is a villain tailor-made for me. I love characters that use their words over their fists, and when I, sitting at my computer, start to kind of vibe with what this guy is saying and fall for his persuasion checks myself, that's when I know I have encountered a very special villain. Lord Enver Gortash, chosen of Bane the Black Hand, a man born in Baldur's Gate, but raised in Hell. A character who overcame overwhelming personal odds and refused to give up regardless of the hardships thrown his way. A fella who grabbed his tattered life by the handles and gained untold amounts of power and wealth, but of course, it was never enough. Ultimately, it may have been the player character or the brain that finally smote this villain and brought him to an end, But in truth, Enver was doomed from the start, because he, at every step of his villainous ascent, was always a servant to his own affliction, insatiable greed. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to this final entry on The Chosen 3 to the very end. This trio of characters is just fantastic, even if they have their own shortcomings. I mean, the way they usher the player along through the narrative to the end credits, revealing new truths and pieces of vital information, I do think it's masterful on a game design and writing level. These are characters that I think will be beloved by fans for decades to come. Now, at some point, we will simply have to revisit this game, look at the Dark Urge more closely, as well as the Emperor Orpheus, the Queen, and, well, Raphael himself. But for now, we gotta move on to other characters in series that I'm very passionate about, mostly so that I don't lose my mind. So thank you guys so much again for watching. Thank you to my beautiful patrons for supporting. That is all for today. Go out there, play some games, be kind to one another, be kind to yourselves, and I will see you all very, very soon. Until then, peace.